First snow. We waited from late fall to early winter, praying it would come before the holidays, before school break. One year the first snow came before Thanksgiving. This year it was warm. Westerlies kept the fall dreary. At first snowfall we raced out of the house, hands jammed in our pockets, 2 pair of socks. Fresh frozen air stinging our cheeks, snowflakes on eyelashes, melting on grinning faces, deaf to the threats and warnings. Walking up the street to make snow angels on George's lawn, the old black lab rolled around too, without his leash. Berry pickers. The sign on the side of the school bus said Fuji Farms. It was outside the front door of the grade school, Monday morning in late May. The strawberries came early, big, bright, in perfect straight rows. Immigration deported the migrant workers without thinking about the truck farms. The farmers tried to round up indigents and homeless to pick berries, but there were no takers. So 5th graders would get out of school early if they would go to the farms and pick the berries. Back-breaking work in the hot sun with adults yelling, "More! Faster!" No lunch, no bathrooms. Filling up on berries, getting cramps. End of the day, dirty hands, jeans with 2 crumpled dollars in the pockets. Come back tomorrow. More berries to pick and apples in the fall. After the fire, the firemen came, put out the fire, put plywood up on the windows, and took Albert's body. The next day, Uncle Jack and my dad took me to Albert's house early in the morning. They took the ladder from the garage and put it up to a side window, handed me a hammer to pry off the plywood. I climbed through the scorched window. His chair was gone, windows broken, charred carpet, melted foam. Broken whiskey bottle on the empty can of lighter fluid near a window, lingering shroud of wet charcoal smoke. I opened the front door. They came in and went to his bedroom, took his valuables. And when the insurance adjusters came and asked, they would say the fireman took the jewelry. Okay, before the draft. And you really had to be there for this to make any sense. Watch some movies about the 60s. Fraudulently carrying unread books, smoking borrowed cigarettes, drinking endless cups of coffee in the Commons at Reed, in the Fishbowl at Oregon, in the park blocks in Portland. Obscurity and ambiguity, the chosen remnant of the faux intelligentsia. Obscurity and let's be incomprehensible but say inscrutable. Let's be Zen reading Alan Watts. Let's backpack in the North Cascades. Let's be Kerouac, Ginsberg, Snyder, Burroughs. Let's drink Crabari Brothers Hardy Burgundy, or Sweet Sauterne, or Mad Dog 2020, heralding the arrival of Boone's Farm apples. Folk songs, folk singers, fiddlesticks, dulcimers, jug band music, bluegrass, Mimi Baez's husband's book before he died on a motorcycle with his cat on his shoulder. It's been so long, he said, since Dylan performed at the Gaslight in the Village and the Beatles came and the in-betweeners were stuck like Kesey and the Merry Pranksters driven by Neil, beats pulling them back to the 40s and 50s, being dragged forward by the hippies into the soon-to-be drug culture. It was hard to be 16, tugged and pulled and pushed and held back, tensions building, churning, the guts of iconic classic Kerouacs churned with resentment at the counterculturists' great literature reduced to watermelon sugar and trout fishing. Unwashed and barefoot, contaminating the steps at City Hall, at City Lights, barely able to read, but standing where the giants stood, vicarious intelligence to comfort them on their way to the hate. Stopping at Mike's place to watch the pinball addicts before finding themselves. But cold hard truth about 16-year-old boys was girls. Whatever it took to try to have sex. Siddhartha was a lure to attract the braless, and Kant's reasonable critique only good when applied to the sun shining through a thin cotton dress, blowing in the summer breeze. Bronze slimmed legs, another lure. As the beginning of the dialogue about intimacy, one dialogist said, trying to convince the other about spirituality and the earthly requirement for sex. The 16s became 18s, and the calendar moved through idle time until it was 1965. And the adults were going to war, and some off the edge of the world place. And some 18s went to war too. Some went to school because they were told to, and because Beaver's dad stopped telling us what to do. Cheerful tortoise. Did the turtles know they had numbers on their back when they raced around the track that circled the bar at the tavern near campus? It was that time when Lyndon went to war, making a stirring speech, pleading for enlistment, revoking deferments, handing out low lottery numbers. 3 years later, a homecoming, a guy went to watch the turtles and have a beer after a long day trying to register at the school he had left before the war. The bartender asked for his ID. He gave his military picture card. The bartender looked it over and said with a grin, "The tortoise doesn't serve turtles." Collage. From different angles, shape-shifted views, a collage with fabricated layers, like Daphne's curtains. Each contributes to the whole. A single parts only seen as additions to a larger reality. Many intentional gestures, like objects placed to catch the eye, divert the gaze from discovering the cosmic truth that slips away easily, never to be seen again, but for guessing. What did you say? Breezes move through the house, confronting conversations, remaking words, blowing parts away, obscuring continuity, challenging listeners' understanding. Distance between rooms diminishes sounds, sentences separated by spaces, broken strings, incomplete sounds. Listeners repair the broken by filling in the blanks. Guest voices raise until a pervasive din stops hearing. Lips move without words. Lip readers or pretenders nod in agreement. Across the dinner table, neither wind nor crowds are necessary to confuse understanding. Changing expressions masks clues that give meaning. After too many dinners, misunderstanding becomes common, halting listening until the bridge of understanding disappears in the fog. Early summer on Dixie Mountain. Crabari Brothers, Hardy Burgundy, imported from California, before twist ties, before boxes, passed back and forth, passenger to driver, up switchbacks, climbing Dixie Mountain to John's farm. Past second growth fir, trees thin closer to the top, fields appear, overgrown meadows, tall grass, wildflowers, strawberries, hay, Christmas trees, goats and sheep. Always cooler above the tree line, soft breezes set the hay dancing, flowers waving in the sun. Berries not ripe, but starting to get color, time to pick in a week or two. Walking up the meadow holding hands, we find a level spot, sitting Lotus, drinking John's tea, quickly drowsy, laying back in the grass. I remember flying through a cloudless sky above those wildflower fields, looking down at her laying in the tall grass, watching her own dreams, smiling. And rants. The bully stood at the end of the bar, leaning on his elbow, cigar clutched between his fingers, pointing at dissenters who questioned his claim that he had the divine right to rule. He condemned ghost enemies, the press, free speech, aliens, all emphasized by banging his clenched fist on the bar. Fat face flushed with rage, spittle dribbling from the corners of his mouth, eyes tight with scorn. Obvious disgust at the opinions of others, at facts, at the truth. His rant continued, while others walked towards the door. Soon the bar was empty. The bar owner washed his glasses, wiped down the bar, turned off the lights, closed the door, and posted a sign saying the bar would be closed for the next 4 years. Still ranting at the end of the bar, the bully didn't realize that the bar was dark and empty.